They laughed when you cried. They clapped when you broke. And when you screamed for help, silence, you were labeled unstable, irrational, dramatic, not because you were weak, but because you saw what they refused to see. You saw the cracks in their systems, the rot behind their smiles, the truth behind their masks. So they called you crazy? Because it's easier to dismiss someone than face the mirror they hold up. But here's the twist. You didn't break. You woke up. And now, the one they mocked is the only one who sees the world for what it is and has the courage to say it out loud. Watch till the end if you've ever been misunderstood, misjudged, or made to feel like the enemy for simply seeing too clearly. And if this hits home, don't forget to subscribe and like. It helps more than you know. They never taught you how to think, only how to obey. From the moment you could walk, you were handed a script. Speak softly, stay in line, smile when it hurts. Don't question too much. They gave you rules dressed as truth and told you that following them was what made you normal. And when your mind wandered into places they didn't understand, when you saw things that didn't fit into their little world, they called you broken, crazy, difficult. But here's what no one tells you. Sanity is just the name they give to submission. The more you shrink yourself to fit inside their comfort, the more sane you appear. And the moment you break form, when you start asking why, when you refuse to nod along and pretend that everything makes sense, they get scared. Because your clarity threatens their illusion. You're not insane for feeling like something is off. You're not wrong for seeing the cracks in their smiles or the emptiness behind their praise. You're not the problem for looking around and thinking, is this it? No, you're awake. And waking up in a world built on sleepwalking feels like madness. Because everywhere you turn, they ask you to be less intense, less curious, less aware. They want you quiet, not because your voice is wrong, but because it's true. In truth, that's dangerous. They don't want you to think for yourself. They want you to blend in, to laugh at the jokes that don't make sense, to chase things that don't fulfill you. Yes. To follow rules that keep you small. Because small is manageable. Small doesn't question the structure. Small doesn't shake the foundation. But here's what they don't realize. There's a storm inside you. A knowing, a refusal. And the more they try to cage it, the more it grows teeth. Because deep down, you've always felt it. That pull away from the crowd. That discomfort. With fake smiles and empty noise. That need to break the script they handed you and write something real. And yes, it's lonely. It's isolating to be the one who doesn't laugh when everyone else does. To sit in silence when everyone else is clapping. To feel the weight of truth while others float in denial. But that loneliness is the cost of clarity. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to burn through the fog, not because you enjoy the pain of being different, but because you can't lie to yourself anymore. They can keep their sanity, their boxed-in lives, and hollow victories. You'll take the madness that comes with seeing clearly, because once you do, there's no going back. And honestly, you wouldn't want to. You noticed it early. Didn't you? That quiet distance between you and the rest? The way people looked at you? Not with hatred, but with discomfort. Like you were something they couldn't quite place. You didn't fit in, and it wasn't because you were doing anything wrong. It was because you saw too much, felt too deeply, asked the kind of questions that made the room uncomfortable, so they pushed you out. Not always with violence, sometimes with silence. They stopped inviting you. They laughed a little too hard when you spoke. They gave you that look, the one that says, you're not one of us. And for a while, it wrecked you. You begged the universe to make you like them. You studied their behavior like a foreign language, hoping if you mimicked it well enough, they'd let you back in. But every time you tried to shrink yourself into someone acceptable, you felt it, that quiet scream inside your chest. The scream of something real begging not to be buried. You weren't rejected because you were less. You were rejected because you were real. You didn't follow their rhythm because you had your own. In a world addicted to sameness, authenticity is threatening. That exile you felt, that wasn't punishment. That was permission. Permission to stop performing. Permission to get quiet enough to hear your own voice. Because when you're finally alone, You're forced to meet yourself without the noise. And that version of you, stripped of applause, stripped of expectations, that's where your power lives. It's where you stop pretending and start becoming. The pain of being the outcast isn't just loneliness, it's clarity. Standing on the outside and seeing how much of the world is built on illusion. It's realizing that the people who cast you out weren't rejecting you. They were protecting the image they've built. And you were the mirror that threatened to crack it. So, yes, it hurts. It hurts to be the one left behind, to walk alone, to rebuild your worth from scratch. But somewhere in that silence, you'll find it, that spark. The one that says, they don't get to define me. The one that stops chasing belonging and starts building a life that belongs to you. You don't need to get back in. You don't need their table, their praise, or their permission. You've been gifted something far greater. Freedom. Freedom to build from truth, not approval. Freedom to walk forward unfiltered, unchained. Because being the outcast wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning of the one no one else was brave enough to write. You've been biting your tongue for so long. It barely feels like yours anymore. Every time you had something real to say, something raw to admit, something painful to release, you held it in. It's not because it didn't matter, because you were taught it was safer to be silent. You learned how to read rooms before you. Learned how to speak your truth. You became fluent in pretending, in smiling when it hurt, in nodding when it stung, in laughing to keep from screaming. And slowly they trained you to believe that your silence was strength. That being quiet made you likable. Holding it in made you mature. Speaking up would make you difficult, dramatic, or ungrateful. But let me ask you this. How many times have you walked away from a moment and felt like something in you died a little because you didn't speak? How many nights have you replayed a conversation, knowing exactly what you wanted to say but didn't? How many versions of you have been buried under the weight of keeping everyone else comfortable? You were never born to be agreeable. You were not created to be convenient. They want your silence because it makes you easier to control. They prefer the version of you that doesn't push back, that doesn't challenge, doesn't force them to face their own reflection. But your voice, that's not noise, that's power. It carries your truth, your rage, your boundaries, your pain, your clarity. And every time you silence it, you don't just keep the peace, you keep their peace at the expense of your own. You've swallowed years of truth just to avoid shaking the table. But here's what no one tells you. That silence, it doesn't disappear. It festers. It grows teeth. It becomes resentment, anxiety, exhaustion. And one day you wake up so full of everything unsaid you can't breathe. So speak. Speak even if your voice shakes. Speak even if they roll their eyes. Speak even if it makes them uncomfortable. Because your truth deserves air. It deserves light. It deserves to be heard, not when they're ready for it, but when you need to say it. You don't owe them your silence. Not your family, not your friends, not your partner, not the world. You owe yourself your freedom. And that begins when you stop negotiating with your voice. When you stop apologizing for needing space, for having standards, for feeling deeply, for seeing things others avoid. Say it, all of it. Not to win, not to hurt, but to stop bleeding internally for the sake of peace that was never mutual. Voice is not too much. It's just too real for people who prefer the sound of submission. And that's not your burden to carry anymore. You didn't mean to start a war. You were just trying to be honest, not cruel, not loud, just real. But suddenly, everything changed. People stopped smiling the same way. Conversations got shorter. Rooms felt colder. You said something they didn't want to hear, and that was all it took. The moment you chose truth over comfort, they chose distance over you. You're not dangerous because you want chaos. You're dangerous because you can see clearly, because you don't nod when you don't agree, because you don't play along. When everything inside you is screaming that this is wrong, and that terrifies them. Because the second you stop pretending, they have to start questioning. And most people would rather destroy the mirror than see what it reflects. You thought telling the truth would build bridges? Instead, it lit matches. You thought being honest would deepen the connection. Instead, it revealed how shallow it really was. But the truth doesn't destroy anything real. It only exposes what was fragile to begin with. And still, the moment you open your mouth and speak what no one else is willing to say, you're seen as the problem. You'll be called intense, unreasonable, disrespectful, all because you refuse to carry their denial for one more day. It hurts, doesn't it? They didn't reject you because you were broken. They rejected you because you made them look at themselves. You were never too much. You were just too real. The discomfort they felt around you. That silence that followed when you spoke. Your truth that wasn't about you. That was the sound of their own masks cracking. Died. Because while they spent their lives pretending you were out there bleeding, living, feeling, they called you intense, dramatic, unstable, too emotional, too cold, too angry. But the truth is, you were just too honest for a world built on denial. See, most people don't want to understand you. They want to categorize you. They want to label what they don't get so they can stay comfortable in their little boxes. They say you think too much, feel too deeply, speak too directly. What they really mean is, you make me uncomfortable. I don't know why. You became the villain in stories they wrote to protect their illusions. Because it's easier to call you crazy than to ask, why does this person make me feel exposed? You were the mirror, and mirrors are terrifying. It's not because they show monsters, but because they show truth. You ever wonder why they distance themselves when you stop playing small? Why they fall silent when you start healing? It's not jealousy. It's fear, because your growth forces them to confront their stagnation. Your clarity threatens their confusion. And your courage shines a light on everything they're still hiding from. You weren't broken. You're awake. You saw things they refused to see. You asked questions they couldn't answer. You moved differently, not because you were lost, but because you were looking for something real. So they turned their backs. They mocked. They whispered. They called you names that never fit. But deep down, even they knew you weren't. The problem, you were the one paying attention. And now? Now they watch you from a distance, still trying to figure you out. Still calling you names they don't even believe anymore, because they can't explain why someone they dismissed didn't disappear. Why someone they called crazy, became dangerous. Not dangerous because you want revenge, but because you don't need their version of reality anymore. You built your own. You found peace in the place they ran from. You became comfortable in the uncomfortable, and that scares the hell out of them. They don't hate you. They just don't get you. And deep down, you've always known that. You've walked into rooms and felt the weight of stares that didn't say a word but said everything. You've spoken your truth and watched it bounce off walls like it didn't belong there. You've shared ideas, visions, pieces of yourself, and been met with blank faces, cheap laughs, or, worse, silence. That silence used to destroy you. It's made you wonder if maybe you were wrong. Maybe you are too much, too intense, too serious, too far ahead for anyone to meet you there. But let me tell you something. Something you need to hear and believe. You are not too much, or just early. You're seeing things they haven't even begun to imagine. You're building in the dark while they sleep under the illusion of light. You're asking questions that make people uncomfortable because the answers will require them to change, and change terrifies people more than failure ever could. See, the road you're on, it's lonely, not because it's the wrong one, but because no one else had the courage to take the first step. That kind of strength, it's threatening. And people don't like what they can't control, so they'll call you arrogant, delusional, cold. They'll twist your silence into a weapon, your focus into ego, your truth into rebellion. But here's the truth. You don't need to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them roll their eyes when you speak. Laugh behind your back. Walk away when you enter. Let them, because you're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to build what they're not ready for. You're here to create what they'll one day need. You're here to become what they can't yet see. That discomfort they feel around. You, that's not your burden. It's your badge. You were never meant to blend in. You were built to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. To question the rules, flip the script, and light the match no one else will touch. And when the smoke clears, when the silence grows too loud to ignore, When the very people who laughed now look around for answers, they'll hear you. They'll see what you saw. They'll realize that the outcast is the one who saw it all coming. So wear the misunderstanding like armor. Because one day your silence will echo louder than every word they used to dismiss you. They won't tell the full story. They'll carve you out of the truth, twist your silence into guilt, and dress their pain in your name. And the worst part, you'll want to defend yourself. You'll want to scream, "That's not what happened." But it won't matter. Because in their version of the story, you're already the villain. Will only make you look more guilty. It hurts, doesn't it? To be misunderstood, to be painted in colors you never chose, to carry the weight of someone else's disappointment, betrayal, or heartbreak, as if it was always your fault. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. You don't owe them a cleaner version of you just to feel liked. You don't need to bleed truth into ears that only want to hear lies that make them feel better. There comes a moment in your life when choosing yourself will look like betrayal to others, when setting a boundary will be called selfish, when walking away will be labeled cold. The ones you once loved, the ones you gave everything to, will rewrite history with you as the reason everything fell apart. Let them believe whatever helps them sleep at night. Because while they're building a narrative to protect their ego, you're building a life that finally honors your soul. You didn't choose to be the villain in their story, but you can choose to stop begging for a role in a script that never had a happy ending for you. You're not here to be adored by everyone. You're not here to soften your truth so others feel it's comfortable. You're here to become, fully, fiercely, finally. And becoming requires destruction of illusions, of fake peace, of the version of you that kept shrinking to be digestible. You were not born to be understood. You were born to be real, raw, unapologetically human. And being human means sometimes you're going to be the storm in someone else's sunshine, the lesson in someone else's comfort zone. The mirror that made them look too close at themselves, and they didn't like what they saw. You can't fix that. Shouldn't have to. Because growth isn't about being loved by everyone. It's about learning to love yourself enough to keep going even when no one claps for you. Even when they boo. Even when they paint you in shadows because they couldn't handle your light. So, if they call you the villain, smile. Not because you enjoy being hated, but because you finally stop living for applause that never fed you anyway. Let them talk. Let them twist. Let them tell their story. Because you're too busy writing the next chapter of your life. The one where you no longer explain yourself to people who were never listening. Let them call you the villain, because deep down you know you were finally playing the hero in your own life. And that's a story only you need to understand.